everyone, to this week's episode of Dive into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara. We're very excited to have with us Representative Alex Garza today, who's also a mayoral candidate for the Taylor mayoral race. We're going to get to hear a little bit about what's happening in Lansing, what's happening in Taylor, and why you should be getting involved with Alex's race. So,
thank you for being on today, Representative Garza.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we'll turn it right over to you if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, let them know who you are, and a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you both so much for having me today. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be on the show today. I'm State Representative Alex Garza. I am the representative for the 12th House District in Lansing, which includes the cities of Taylor, Romulus, and the Township of Van Buren. I'm actually my third year as state representative in the state house, so I'm honored to serve my district at Lansing. Just a little bit of a background on myself. I served 5 years on the Taylor City Council prior to becoming state representative. 4 of those years, actually, I served. When I first got elected, I was a student at the U of M Dearborn, so I have some deep roots in Taylor politics and in being a community leader here in Taylor. Also, when I was reelected to the city council, I became the city council president and served for a year as city council president before I became state rep. And now I'm running for mayor in the city of Taylor. So I do have some very deep roots in my community here in Taylor. We're looking to run a very, of course, positive campaign like we have over the last few months, going into the primary, which is only about 10 days away now. So we're very excited to be on the show today and of course, introducing our campaign to your viewers today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alex. What a long history in politics.
I didn't know you were on city council that long. That's really nice. So to become to run for city council, like what first motivated you, or what first made you get involved in that?
Right. Thank you for the question. So I moved to the city of Taylor when I was 12 years old, and I've been here ever since. And I started to get involved actually as soon as I moved to the city. I started attending city council meetings here in Taylor. Started getting involved with the local food bank here. I really wanted to get to know the city that I moved to as you know, in really my formative years of middle school and high school. And I got really involved at a younger age and really became involved even more as I continued to get older. And at 19, a lot of the community members who I've engaged with over those years, they convinced me to run for city council. A lot of them told me, you should run for city council. At the time, was not on my radar at all because I was a sophomore at U of M. But it was definitely something I considered and ended up running for council. That was a very interesting year. I knocked on about 15,000 doors over the course of that year myself, actually. And, knocked on a lot of doors, met a lot of people. And a lot of folks discounted our campaign, though, in 2013 when we first ran for city council. I was 19 years old. I was also I would have been the first person of color if I was elected. And I think a lot of folks really discounted that. And we were able to win in a landslide election in 2013 and become the youngest and first person of color to ever be elected to the Taylor City Council. So that was the first time I got involved really in running myself. I volunteered and have worked on different campaigns prior to that, but that was my first time that I actually dove into politics myself for the first time. So I was happy to do that, and I'm very happy to have been able to represent the people of my city here in Taylor for the last 8 years in different capacities.
That's really interesting. Getting involved around it's not a lot of people do so, especially at that level of running for city council. So that's really good.
Yeah, one of our conversations we're having a lot is how do we activate high schoolers and connect with high schoolers? And you are one of those like rare gems. High schooler, you're exactly what YBM's always looking for. Is like that's like, hey, I'm going to make a change. So like that's really cool that you've really been true to this pretty much since, like you said, your formative years of being in middle school.
Right. Yeah, it's important. I always tell folks, getting involved in your community is super important. And I'll say this: a lot of times we see, a lot of younger folks don't, unfortunately, a lot of them don't choose to get involved a lot of times. And when they do want to get involved, it's important that we encourage them to, because you know what, there has to be a seat at the table for younger voices. There has to be a seat at the table for young leadership, and really, it's up to us as younger leaders, and even for you all. It's super important to encourage others to get involved, because a lot of times we see, many of our younger folks that we see in our communities, they might be, too shy, or really don't feel like there's a seat at the table for them. But I always tell folks, you have to make that seat at the table for the younger generation. And, I always say those 15,000 doors I knocked in 2013 really provided a seat for our younger generation to have that voice in me at the city council level. So it's about the work you put in. It's about, the message that you're pushing as someone who's looking to get involved, and there's a seat at the table for younger voices, and there has to be, especially when we're making policies that affect them as well.
Yeah, definitely.
That's really interesting history and how you came about, like, to everything. So as far as your being a state rep, you've been a state rep for what,
3 years
3
now.
years,
Yes.
yeah, at the time. So what do you feel are the top issues that you're working on, or what do you feel like you want more people to be aware of in your representative seat?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the work that we've done over the last few years, I've been very, very proud of a lot of the work that we've been able to accomplish. We've passed 4 public acts, so four laws that have been signed in from bills that I've introduced. We've also passed 3 additional bills this year that out of the state house, which they're now in the state senate. So we're hoping that we can get 3 more public acts this year. But there's a lot of important work that we're working on in the state legislature. One of the bills that we're working on currently is actually a marijuana bill that would allow students to access their medicine at school. Currently, right now, if a student who is at school and they are prescribed medical marijuana for whatever ailment that they're suffering from, they're not allowed to. Their parents are not allowed to administer their medicine on school premises. So it's something that we're really working on, and we're actually getting a lot of support for in Lansing right now, is to be able to lift that statute and put into law in Michigan that, if there's a student who needs medical cannabis and they need it at their school, that it would be allowed for them to be administered that on school property. So it's something that we're very proud to have introduced. We've gotten quite a bit of support from many of our colleagues on, and we're looking forward to continuing that on this year, and hopefully get that past the finish line this fall.
Yeah, that's really good. And like, one thing I'll say about that bill is really important to me, because having epilepsy and knowing a lot of students that do have epilepsy and what their parents have to do to be able to administer their medication versus, like, other medications you can just take them on school grounds, and, like, so many parents have to take them out of school, off school property, administer it, and then get them back to school. So that cuts up both the students and the parents' day,
Right.
being able to do that. And it kind of, like, I mean, if I know when I first started taking my cannabis in, like, private, it makes it keeps that, perception that it's a wrong thing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not something you want, like, especially the students growing up and, like, taking this as a medicine, for them to
Right.
feel like
Yeah.
their parents are doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's exactly why we introduced this bill. We want to get away from that stigma of this being something that's wrong or something that's illegal. In the state of Michigan, it's completely legal. And we have to make sure that we are getting rid of that stigma and moving legislation like this forward, because it's proven to be, it's a medicine just like anything you would pick up at Walgreens or CVS for any medication. This is exactly what helps people, like, folks that suffer, for many different ailments. I mean, there's a laundry list of ailments that medical cannabis helps with, and is able to control seizures, like you mentioned, Zahara. I mean, there's definitely a lot of different things that it helps with, and we have to be able to administer that in schools for folks that are prescribed this, and it has to happen in Michigan. Other states are doing it. Michigan has to be a leader when we're talking about medical cannabis, because it's something that's proven. It's something that is science behind it, and we have to be able to get rid of that stigma going forward as a state.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's thank you so much for everybody who's working on that, because that is really good for us to finally be able to have that. And yeah, I mean, that was one of the scary things about, I know for many people, about starting cannabis is the stigma that's attached to it.
Yeah.
Right.
And just the constant feeling of like, you know, you're doing something legal in a sense, even though it is legal here, but that's the perception that so many still carry around with the cannabis.
And it takes us attacking that from multiple fronts to work on the destigmatization of it. And so having something coming out of Lansing that's like a huge statement of destigmatization is definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you. It's something I'm very proud to work on, and like I said, we've been able to get a lot of folks on board with it, and something that I'm really confident we'll be able to move when we come back into the legislature in the fall.
So how can, you know, constituents or just, you know, the general public, how can we help further this issue along?
Yeah. So the bill actually, or the proposed bill was referred to our committee on regulatory reform. So I would say make sure you're calling members, call the members of the regulatory reform committee, just to voice your support. I think it's important that members of the legislature know that there's support for this bill, and making sure that they get on board with it as well. So whatever advocacy that folks can call their representatives, even if they're not on the regulatory reform committee. Call your state rep's office. Let them know that you're supportive of this legislation, and we can definitely work together on that to make sure that we're getting folks to reach out to their state representatives. And like I said, I do expect this to move, but all the support we can get is super important for the passage of this bill when we are able to get it on the floor, likely this fall.
Absolutely.
So is there any other big news out of Lansing that you would say that constituents should be following or aware of?
Yeah, I mean, there's also some other bills currently in the process. We've done a lot with criminal justice reform, especially around marijuana in general and cannabis in general. I think it's super important that you're looking at all the bill packages that are coming up. We're trying to do our best, especially again going back to the cannabis issue here. Medical marijuana legal. We have the recreational now legal as well in Michigan. We're trying to do our best to look at who's been imprisoned in Michigan for cannabis related offenses over the years, and we're trying to really get them get the laws changed where we can help these folks get out of prison, get out of jail for these offenses, because we know now, again, that's part of eliminating the stigma around cannabis. People should not be locked up in Michigan prisons because of marijuana offenses, and we have to do a better job at advocating to our governor, advocating to our state representatives, our state senators, to make sure that it's a priority for the legislature. We've done a lot of good things surrounding this in the legislature, but we can always be doing more in order to get people, back in their homes, back to their families who have offenses related to cannabis. We know that there's a lot of folks locked up in prison right now in Michigan that should be back with their families, and we want to make sure we're doing our best to look at these bill packages and do our best to make sure we're advocating to make sure this is a priority for the administration, make sure it's a priority for our legislature, because I've always been a big advocate for this as a state representative, but being one of 110 isn't always the best thing for just having one or few voices. So I think advocacy is super important when it comes to advancing these.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is one thing. The whole issue of getting prisoners out and destigmatizing is one thing that we're really working and pushing hard as the Michigan Cannabis Freedom Coalition.
Sure.
Which is just like a group of leaders from the Cannabis Caucus, from our state chapter of Michigan Normal, Last Prisoners Project.
Progressive Caucus, Young
Dems. I know I'm forgetting so much other organizations.
It's a pretty diverse coalition that have, I would say, vested interest in the same thing. And so instead of all of us working separately, we've come together to work on this type of issue, specifically around clemency and a lot of prisoner support. So support while they're in prison and support when they get out of prison.
Yeah, and
right.
The first thing that we were able to accomplish as a coalition was the governor granting the release of Michael Thompson.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
that is definitely something, you know, like I hope we can definitely keep pushing forward. And thank you so much for working on that in the legislature. That is really important issue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure, and I'll continue my advocacy while I'm there because it's super important. I know there's a lot of folks that are directly affected by this, and we want to make sure that we're doing our best from my standpoint as a representative for the state house and pushing this forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you guys are welcome into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
Awesome. So I guess we can transition a little from Lansing and talk about the mayoral race. So specifically, what made you decide to run for the mayoral race? A switch from Lansing back so local back into your roots. What was your motivation behind that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think this is one of the top questions I get, especially being on the campaign trail. And I always tell folks this: if you would have asked me this past December, past November, if I was going to run for mayor, I would have said absolutely not. It wasn't something on my radar at all. I really enjoy my work in the state legislature. I love representing my district in the state legislature, and I would still have another term to run next year if I so chose. But instead, I decided to run for mayor, and the answer is quite simple. When I looked at this, later last year in late December, I was looking at what was happening in our local government. Just so folks know, and who might not have a background on what's happening in Taylor, our current mayor was indicted on 33 counts of federal bribery and wire fraud charges in the city of Taylor, and it really has put our city government in a very peculiar position. The mayor, we're not sure what's going to happen with him. He's running for reelection. Like I said, he has a trial that's set for January, and I knew that the city of Taylor's future is just too important to have the uncertainty of what's going to happen with our mayor in a few months. So I talked to my wife, I talked to community members, and I talked to them about potentially running for mayor. And from all the feedback that I received, I decided to enter the race and make sure that we have a stable leadership for the future. The city of Taylor is a wonderful city. I love the city that I call home, and I'll call home for many, many more years to come. I plan to raise my family here, and I want to make sure that we're putting our city in the best position to succeed. And with the current mayor in office and the current mayor running for reelection, unfortunately, that just doesn't put our city into the best path forward to become successful. Many businesses are deciding not to locate here because of the perception of public corruption happening here in the city. Residents from other communities are deciding not to locate here because of the public corruption perception that's happening here. So it's really a positive message we're pushing. We want to restore transparency, accountability back to City Hall, and we want to lead our city into a more positive direction. I mean, we've seen what's happened over the last few years, and we want to make sure we're changing course and making sure folks can actually trust our city government again. So that's really the main platform we're running on is put somebody, myself, into the mayor's office. I've been elected twice to the city council, twice as our state representative. You can trust someone who has proven time and time again to be there for the people of the city of Taylor, and that's been our message at the doors.
Wow, yeah, and it's really interesting to see how much has come from all of that corruption and how much it affects like things that people don't think about, like really.
Yeah, it was about like the businesses and homeowners, like maybe not coming to the area, but at the same time, I guess you want security in where you're living or where you're building a building and a business, and so I guess I can see that, but it's not my first thought.
Yeah, like that wasn't. I mean, it was bringing that up because it's like that's a different way of looking at it. I mean, it's like it's one thing to run against the mayor because of like the charges. It's like that's but to learn of how much it's affected the city as a whole. And I can't believe he's running again.
Yeah. It's very interesting race. And also the current mayor, he's running as a write-in candidate, so it's an even different dynamic that's occurring here. But yeah, I mean, it's very much, when I hear at the doors is a lot of folks just don't understand kind of, why the mayor is running for reelection, and it's his right to run for reelection. But there's a lot of legal challenges that he's having currently. And I always tell folks this: I don't, I believe wholeheartedly in, innocent until proven guilty. But also at the same time, the position of mayor is much bigger than one person. This is a city. We have a city of 63,000 people, and the legal troubles of one person are casting a negative and dark cloud over our whole community. And in my opinion, when you're charged with these charges, you should focus on clearing your name and doing whatever you can. But in the meantime, this city has to move forward. And the only way we'll move forward is with a new administration that comes into place in November. And that's our message. We have to move forward as a community. What if the mayor did or did not do what the FBI says he did? I have no idea, but we have to move forward as a community in the meantime. We can't have this anchor of an FBI investigation on our mayor and expect to move forward as a community.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I already heard it before, but it's seeing like the whole, like how it's affected the community as a whole, the actions of one person, how it can continue to negatively impact, is really interesting to see or to learn about.
And it brings us back to something we often talk about on the show, is how important elections really are, and how important like the local elections are.
Especially since they're so often overlooked and many people don't know what's going on within their own city. So that just proves definitely how much more, especially the younger generation, needs to be invested in the city and helping move it forward.
Yeah, most definitely. Speaking of like the size of engaged people, is voter turnout high in Taylor? Is it low in Taylor? Is what does it feel like there on the ground?
Yeah.
Passage of the
Prop 3.
Prop 3. I forgot the name of it. Is helping or doing with that?
Yeah, so good. That's a great question. So Prop 3 has absolutely been phenomenal for voting turnout for the city of Taylor, and I'm sure for many communities across our state. But we've seen a record amount of absentee ballots requested for a city municipal election ever. So we expect, the highest turnout will be absentee ballots again this election, like it was last year. So we're seeing, I believe, 5,200 requests for absentee ballots in the city of Taylor. I think we're expecting another 2,000 people to show up at the polls on election day. So it's definitely going to be a heavy, again, absentee ballot race here, and we've had a great absentee voter chase program that we've implemented for our campaign. So yeah, I mean, Prop 3 has done wonders with increasing participation overall in our elections here, and it's shown again this year. So we're happy with the turnout. As far as so far with the AVs, we'll see kind of how many folks turn out on election day, but I'm expecting that this will probably be the most attended in participation as far as our residents go in this municipal primary that we've ever had before. So we're seeing very good turnout, and we're seeing much enthusiasm from voters, especially with what's currently happening with the current mayor. I think a lot of folks are becoming more involved and they want to participate in this election.
That's awesome. That's a good to know. Prop 3 is great.
It is. It's, and it's a phenomenal thing that we're able to include more folks in the process. I always tell folks the more people that vote, the better results we get for election. No matter who the candidates are, the more people that participate, the better results for everyone who's involved in the process.
Yeah, it's so crazy how local elections are decided by so few members.
Yes, exactly. So we have, for instance, for a general election in Taylor, I think the record amount of folks who have voted in a general election for a local election here in Taylor is about 10,000 voters. We have over 44,000 registered voters in Taylor. So 25% of the voters, elect our leadership in the local level out of 100%. So a quarter of the voters decide who represents their entire city. And it's important that we try to engage more folks in the process. That's when our campaign has, moved forward and has been engaging many folks who traditionally don't vote in local elections to try to convince them that, local elections are important too, just as important as any other. And I would argue even more important than federal elections and state elections, because local elections, you elect people who affect your everyday life. I mean, they make policies surrounding public safety. They make policies surrounding road work and infrastructure, and whether your trash gets picked up on time and everything else. I mean, these are things that are affecting you every single day of your lives, and people should, in my opinion, be more enthusiastic about electing their local leaders, because that is really where the rubber meets the road a lot of times for communities.
Yeah, and that's something that regret with a lot of people is that, local elections are so overlooked when, in the federal, yeah, there's stuff that are going to affect you, but not your everyday, to, like, the things that you do every day. And then I
Right.
think with the pandemic, the pandemic really pushed that, line or put that into perspective to a lot of people once they saw like how different cities handled the situation and the support they got from different cities to like now take a better look at what goes on in their city and the elections.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because we saw on the local level, many of the communities started organizing around vaccination distribution, getting resources to their residents during the pandemic, and that's really how many communities started operating. They had to have their own COVID response plan, even though we had a statewide response by our governor, Governor Whitmer, and it was definitely on our locals to do what was best for their communities at the time. So it's important to have stable leadership that's going to lead on issues like that, and are able to take their communities and keep them safe, and making sure that they're doing their best to have responses in any emergency, no matter what, if it's COVID-19 or flood response or whatever the emergency is for that community. Your local leadership is important in how they respond.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's where we saw the strength of so many of the local leaders, and we saw so many that just failed to do what their city or their constituents needed during this like whole pandemic. That really showed the strength of some and where there was change needed in others.
Yeah. And I think accessibility was another thing that people really started focusing on, was like which electeds were accessible to me, who was responding to my calls, like whether it was their office or it was them personally, like who was responsive, who was really helping us. And, I know in Ypsi where I'm at, like we had a couple county commissioners and a couple city council people that were really, really fighting for more rent relief and more utility relief when the COVID hit. And that didn't happen in all the other communities. So I think that conversation about what was lacking has started happening a lot, especially with young people who were so heavily hit with like the rent issue as a predominantly renter area. Like
Sure.
it was really frustrating to talk to friends in other areas who didn't have a really extensive barrier busters program like Ypsilanti had. So I
Right.
think that we're seeing just so many more examples now of the power local electeds have and how it can really work or it can really go south.
Right. You're absolutely right. I mean, even given the city of Taylor for an example, unfortunately, our local government from the mayor's office just really missed the mark when we're responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. It took pressure from me as a state representative onto the mayor's office for them to actually set up vaccine clinics for the city and work with the county in order to, set these up. And it's important that, again, it goes back to the local leadership and what the priorities are. But that shows you again, the preoccupied in the FBI investigation, and we're suffering as a city to see proper response to pandemic, proper response to different things, and we have to have someone who's 100% focused on the issues at hand for our community, and that's something that I always tell folks at the door. As your mayor, 100% of my time is going to be focused on how we continue to move our city forward and how we respond as a community to different needs of our constituents. There's so many different needs for the city of Taylor. The needs of the North End residents are not the same needs as the South End residents, and there's many different issues that are in our neighborhoods that we have to address. There's not a one size fits all approach to local government. You have to be responsive to the needs of your community, and there's many different needs at any given time across the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like for a lot of cities, this the mark is that they didn't do what their city needed. They did what copied from basically anywhere else.
It's supposed to work.
It's what's supposed to work. But as we said, every city is individualized, and that's why local politics are so important.
Right.
That pandemic definitely highlighted that and showed that to a lot of people. So hoping for a much bigger turnout, especially continuing forward, and voters across like all the different states.
Yeah.
Cities.
Absolutely.
So once again, you guys are watching Dive into Young Politics live streaming. Dive into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
Excellent. So, speaking of those issues, Alex, if you had to choose like 3 top issues for the city of Taylor, what would you say that those are right now that either, you think yourself personally as a citizen of Taylor, or that you've heard on the doors the most commonly?
And
Yeah.
to be able to resolve them or work around them.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's a great question, and I would say first and foremost, our big priority is to really restore transparency and accountability to City Hall. I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing, and it's so hurtful to see at the doors of just how many of our residents have lost faith in what's happening at City Hall and who's at City Hall, in particular the current administration. And when you live in a community, you should be able to trust your mayor. You should be able to trust your city government. And we want to make sure that we're bringing that trust back to City Hall. On day one, I have committed to administering a forensic audit of our finances in the city and each department to restore that trust to our residents. I want to publish our forensic audit and show where money has been used in wrong ways, where money has been used the right way, and how we're going to fix it going forward. And it's important that we are very transparent as an administration. My biggest commitment as the mayor of our community is going to make sure that I run the most transparent and accountable administration that we've ever seen in our community. That is the only way we're going to be able to restore trust within the city of Taylor. And I'm committed to doing that. 2, we have to make sure that we're keeping our city safe. We have had many issues over the last few years with retention in our police and fire departments. We're seeing a shortage, I think nationwide, really, of folks coming into the profession of being a police officer, folks coming into the profession of becoming a firefighter, and we're having trouble retaining folks in our public safety departments, which is making our community less safe overall. And we have to do a better job at working with our city unions to make sure that we're able to raise that starting wage for our firefighters, raise the starting wage for our police officers in order to attract the best of the best in the industry. So we're going to be laser focused on working with our union groups to make sure that we're doing our best to go back into these union contracts and looking how we can best attract folks to our city and make sure that we're doing our best to keep our people safe. Really, it's super important, and that's on a lot of voters' minds as well. Third, we have to start fixing our local roads. While the state has been focused on fixing highways and other roads that are state trunk lines, our local roads are still crumbling too. The state doesn't, necessarily fix the local roads. It's up to each community to fix their own roads. So we have to fix our roads, but that doesn't just include roads and infrastructure. I'm talking about underground infrastructure too, water infrastructure in the city of Taylor. I mean, we've seen catastrophes happen across the state, the city of Flint, for instance, and we have to do our best as a local community to invest in that underground infrastructure as well. It's a big priority for me to invest in water infrastructure, and there's dollars there for us to prioritize this, and we're going to make sure that we make it a priority for Taylor again.
Awesome.
So,
Go for it.
So concerning the infrastructure in the city, was with the recent flooding, were you guys affected because of that?
Yeah, good question. I'll say this. Thank God the city of Taylor was not directly impacted by the recent flooding. And I can say this, almost every community around us was affected by this flooding directly. To our north, Dearborn Heights was affected greatly by it, which we share a northern border with Dearborn Heights. Dearborn, of course, was affected, which is just our neighbor to the east. We've seen so many flooding issues around us, but we did not have many folks affected by it, as many communities have. So we were lucky in that way. And we have made significant investments into our infrastructure, but there's many neighborhoods in our community in the city of Taylor that still have backup issues, which many of our communities, or many of our neighborhoods in our community, have basements, and we have many backup issues that are occurring throughout our city. So there's still much to be invested in the city of Taylor, but I'm very happy that we saw good results with our infrastructure this past rainfall. It wasn't that way though the few months ago when we had that other giant rain event where we had many people, especially here in my neighborhood where I live in it's really central Taylor. You saw people, I mean, everyone stuff from their basement on the front lawn. And we've seen that in Dearborn now, and we've seen that in other communities. And it's really a conversation that we're going to see take pretty much a lot of steam right now because of what's happening across the state. I mean, we're having more rain accumulation happen in our state of Michigan, and we're seeing a lot of climate change happen. So it's up to our locals as well to work with our state government, our federal government, to see how we can update the capacity of our stormwater system as well. Our stormwater system is just not was never built to have this much rain accumulate at one time because we never seen these types of rain totals before. So it's really about how we update that infrastructure. It's going to be millions of dollars of infrastructure costs that are going to have to occur over the next many years. But we have to have that conversation now because climate change is happening. We're seeing much more rainfall than we've ever seen before. And our communities and our homes, the people that we represent, deserve better when we're talking about capacity issues and water and rainwater. People just don't want to have their belongings destroyed. I mean, their pictures destroyed, their homes destroyed because of poor planning on behalf of local governments and federal government, state government. So it's going to take a lot of money, but I'm confident that we can work together in order to start updating this infrastructure as we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, Dearborn was affected by both floodings, and the first one is our basement was one of the ones that was flooded with the sewer water, and just the cleanups and seeing the devastation all across the different neighborhoods, like people's belongings out on the street, and there was nowhere. Like the trash took a while to for them to be able to pick everything up, like because of how widespread the effect was.
Yeah, exactly, and that's something we saw in Taylor. This, people call them 100-year rain events. Now they're like every few months rain events.
Yeah.
It's really changed, and I always tell folks, it's so there's still folks out there who don't believe in climate change, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. I mean, it's definitely something that we've seen happen. And we're going to continue to see this happen. It's not going to go away. It's just going to continue to get worse as we continue to go on. And it's really important and incumbent upon our local governments to respond and update their water infrastructure and capacity issues that people are having across the state. It's going to take a very big effort, but I'm confident with folks like Debbie Dingell, who's our congresswoman. I'm confident she'll be a great leader on the federal level, which she's always has been, and making sure we're getting the money we need in order to do so.
Yeah, and talking about change and its effects on our communities, that's another thing that she does, and that we need more people out there to talk about it on that level.
Yeah.
To get the change, because I mean, I feel especially for Michigan, holding so much of like the freshwater resources for a lot of people and how much devastation goes into it. I'm talking about like Line 5 and what it can do to the water that so many people rely on. And if we keep getting such big amounts of rain, what's going to happen to the lakes and how that's going to devastate
right.
going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say this, we see many different forms of climate change happening. On the West Coast, we see wildfires and we see drought and we see things like that of that nature. To the south, we're seeing more hurricanes occurring. To the east, we see, different types of natural disasters and tropical storms and everything else. So we're seeing a lot of climate change. Ours here in Michigan it's much more mild than what we're seeing across the country. And I keep telling folks this, in the coming years, you're going to see a lot of people from different parts of the country start moving to the Midwest because of even though we're experiencing climate change, we're experiencing it at a much different level than we're seeing across the country. So there's been a lot of folks moving to our communities, including Taylor, Dearborn, other communities across Southeast Michigan. But it's important that we're continuing to be a leader in updating our infrastructure, because like I mentioned, climate change isn't going anywhere, and we're going to see a lot of folks moving across the country because of what we're seeing. I mean, there's some drastic effects of climate change happening across the country, and it's not just us; it's the entire country that's experiencing the effects of this.
Yeah, most definitely. Does Taylor have like a climate action plan like some other cities does, or is that something that you would implement if not?
Yeah, great question. So we don't currently have a climate action plan. There's definitely going to be a climate action plan when I become mayor, and we're going to engage the community on it because we want to see what folks want us to focus on. And one of the main components of that is going to be making our buildings, our city-owned buildings, green, and making sure that we're doing our best to limit our footprint on the environment and our and climate change as a whole. So that's something that we can immediately do and work on for our administration, which is going to be a big goal for us to really get our buildings in line as far as being energy efficient, being very, very green and environmental friendly. So that's something we plan on working on. But as far as the plan goes, we do have a priority to make sure that we're having that climate action plan for our community as a whole, and we're going to definitely be engaging our residents on that in developing that plan together once we are elected in November.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. I know that's helped a lot of communities be able to like stick to deadlines and goals, and it's made a lot of like citizens in the community feel like our leaders are acting and listening on this. So I'm really excited to hear you're going to implement something like that.
Absolutely.
And hopefully that will get more cities, especially neighboring cities, to take up that action, and keep pushing the need for us to take climate change seriously,
Right.
in our own communities.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Because it's definitely not going anywhere, and it's probably not going to get better. So we've got to work with what we've got.
Yeah, I tell folks, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. But everything counts when you're talking about climate change and how we can lessen our footprint on it. It's super important to have the leadership in place that has the willpower to make the changes, though, because there's a lot of folks who might talk about it, but they don't implement change in this space. So it's important that we have folks who are willing to have that conversation and actually put their words into action on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, elections.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Elections.
So I think you'll have this will be really interesting to hear your thoughts on it, especially since you got involved in politics so young. So what advice would you give to someone, especially the youth, about wanting to get involved in politics, and how would you steer them into that direction?
Yeah, very good question. And one of the things I'm a very big proponent of is getting folks to get involved early. The earlier the better, honestly. I mean, I got involved when I was in middle school, started going to city council meetings. I would recommend folks start doing that. If they're starting at ground zero for getting involved, start going to your local city council or township trustee meetings wherever you're living at. There's some type of local legislative body that governs your community. So start getting involved there. Go to those meetings. Start meeting folks. Join YDM. Though that's always a good start as well. We have to do better at getting more of our younger generation involved. I was able to start early and kind of myself. No one really enticed me to get involved. I did it on my own, which is not always the how folks start to get involved. But encouraging folks, going with you, or taking folks with you to city meetings, getting involved on a city commission. That's another way. We have like the youth council that we have youth get involved, and that's actually went away over the years, but we plan to start that back up, which will be the mayor's youth advisory council. If we are successful in November, I plan to make sure we're doing our best to engage our youth in Taylor, and but make sure you're putting yourself in the position to get involved. There's many opportunities in many communities to be involved in different ways, and it's important to start somewhere and really gain your roots somewhere. Taylor has been a welcoming community to me, and just embracing me as a young leader in this community. And it's important to start somewhere and look at the local boards in your city or township and start to take a look at what you're interested in. I mean, there's like beautification commission, recreation commission. I mean, there are so many different boards where you can get involved here in our community and in many communities across the state. So it's important to start somewhere and to start somewhere where you have a passion for as well.
Yeah, and speaking of that, like I got involved because of the cannabis issue,
Right.
and which led to Dana's campaign with the Dems Party, and then from there. But that was really what first got me interested in politics, and I think like that's what people should focus. Like some people, if you don't have to run for office to be involved in politics. There's so
Right.
many other ways to be involved, even behind the scenes, even just learning about it, and yeah, that was how it was an issue based. So
Yeah, I
Right.
was environmental was my thing that brought me in. I studied environmental politics in college and just got more and more involved in activism from there. It was really the shutting down pipelines was what got me really involved, if I'm going to be
Yeah.
honest.
I must leave.
Yeah, shutting down pipelines for me. But no, I think that I love that you're saying that. There's so many little commissions and little boards, and a lot of those are appointed by leaders in the community. So like,
Right.
there's tons of opportunities for people to be on those boards or to volunteer with those boards. And we often overlook the important work that those groups are doing. A lot of what happens in communities wouldn't get done without those commission boards.
Right. And I tell people that all the time. It's super important we have folks in, like you mentioned, I think it's a good point. Just to get involved, you don't have to run for office. There's so many different things where you can involve yourself with. I mean, when I was on city council, we took the advice of our boards that did the important work on our planning commission, on our beautification commission. They would recommend to city council what we spend resources on, what we do to prioritize different parks, and on the recreation commission. So I mean, these are important positions where you can, work on issues that are near and dear to your heart. If you're an environmentalist, being on our Parks and Recs Commission is super important to prioritize dollars for green spaces. So there's so many different ways to get involved without actually, directly running for office. There's many opportunities to get involved in starting somewhere. I mean, if that leads to you running for office in the future, that's a beautiful thing, and I encourage it. But there's different ways where you can start at and find what you're really passionate about in your local community.
yeah, and for anyone out there, a great way to become involved is with the Young Democrats of Michigan, because that is something that we do, and we take from our followers and from other people on the board what issues are important to them, and we try to highlight and work our campaigns and things like that around those issues, or at least highlight them and educate the people about them.
Yeah. And one of the other things we try to do is connect you with those issues that you're interested in. So if it's like a commission or a caucus that you can work on those issues with, we're going to help send you in that direction. Because I think so often young people are kind of just like, where do I go? And so we're trying to fill some of those gaps and make sure that, those engaged high schoolers and those engaged college kids aren't out there on their own. They're in a community, in a family of organizers.
Right. Absolutely. And, I always tell folks this too, especially those who live in my district in Taylor, Romulus, or Van Buren Township. Reach out to me directly too. I mean, reach out to my office. There's always opportunities for you to also, intern with your local state rep or your state senator. Even if some of, I had interns when I was on city council as a city council member, who helped in my everyday office setting at city council. So, I mean, there are many opportunities to get involved in different ways. I mean, it's just about picking up that phone or sending that email and seeing what's out there as far as internship opportunities or different commission opportunities. There's so much out there, and if anyone has any who lives in my district or even downriver in general, if they have any questions about how they can get involved, please reach out to me in my campaign as well. We're always looking for folks to take under our wing to help make Downriver a better place for everyone to live, and we're happy to engage folks on many different levels, especially younger folks as well.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that. Such a leader. It's really important.
Yeah, thank you.
And once again, you guys are watching Dive into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
Yeah.
Um, So, so once again, thank you so much for joining us today. So before we end the show, what are your parting words to the listeners?
Yeah, well, thank you both. Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you. I really appreciate you having me on the show today. But my parting words are this. When we're again looking at our local government and our local elections, even if you're not in Taylor, make sure you're looking to ensure that if you have a local election coming up, be sure to vote. August 3rd is the primary. November 2nd is the general election. It is so important that you get involved at the local level, not just by voting. That's an important step in this whole process, but also engaging yourself in local campaigns and engaging yourself in local government. It is super important to be involved. But I just want to leave folks with ensure that you're voting August 3rd. Make sure you make a plan to vote, and take some friends as well. I know a lot of, especially our younger folks, are disengaged with the process, disengaged with voting. But get folks and try to convince them to vote and make a plan to vote, so that we can have a local government and government that reflects your values as well. Because you'll never have a government that reflects your values if you're not putting yourself at the ballot box to make the changes that you want to see. So I'll leave folks with that.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, with the passage of property, you can register to vote same day. You just have to do it at the clerk's office. So if you're not registered to vote yet, do not worry. You can do
Yep.
that on election day. Just get out, be informed, and vote. And then, how can people get in touch with your campaign or look your campaign up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're always looking for volunteers, interns. We also have fellowship program that we have on our campaign. So if there's anyone who's looking to get involved, we'd love to have you. Our campaign email is garzaformayor@gmail.com. That's Garza, Garza, FORMAYOR @gmail.com. Also, you can connect with us on our website at garzaformayor.com, which is the same, GARZAFORMAYOR, and call our campaign as well at 313-398-6117. Jaya, who's our phenomenal campaign manager, would love to talk to you and connect you with the campaign and how you can get involved.
Awesome. So yeah, for someone to volunteer, especially with it being GOTV week and going into GOTV weekend, please reach out to Alex Garza. I definitely think that we're going to see some big changes in Taylor this coming cycle, and I'm really excited about the path you're going on, the responsiveness you have to the community, and we can just see the deep care that you have for the city of Taylor and for the people there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure and it's my honor to serve Taylor in city council and as their state representative, and I'm praying that they entrust me the mayor's office as well, because I will definitely not let the people of my city down.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you once again for joining us. We really enjoyed this discussion, and we'll definitely connect with you again soon.
Yeah, most definitely. So
Absolutely.
we'll be back next Saturday from 1 to 2, and we hope to see you again on Dive into Young Politics with Leah and Zahara. And Alex, thank you so much again for coming out today, and good luck to you. Get some rest, and we hope to see a good result on primary day for you.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you later.
Bye. Take care.
Bye. Oh, man. Did he end the stream? Yeah, there we go. No, he hasn't ended the stream yet. We're still on the camera. All right. Well, guys, you heard it first again today how important our local elections are. So, we've had several candidates on: Corey Morris, Alex Garza, Amanda Jaskowski. So please don't hesitate to get involved with these local candidates. Definitely make sure that you're staying engaged, you're getting out to vote, whether that's absentee voting. Make sure you drop off your ballot if you're absentee voting at this point. Same day registration, so just head to your clerk's office. You can register day of. And every vote really does count in these local elections. You heard Alex talking about a city of 40-some thousand registered and about 10,000 votes. So this is really where your vote matters and it really counts. So this is your chance to have a voice and get out there and, really make sure that the people that are representing you truly are representing you and working for you. Anything to add, Zahara?
No, not at this point.
All right, I think I got it all in there. So drop off your absentee ballots, same day registration. It's GOTV week and GOTV weekend next week. So this coming weekend. There's a lot of things happening. If you're looking for something to do today, there's a Dearborn Canvas launch at Ford Field for John Akari and Aaron Byrnes. We'd love to see you there 3 to 7 today. So if you're looking to volunteer today, there's your first opportunity. Otherwise, we'll see you next Saturday. Have a wonderful week, guys. Yeah.